How's everybody doing? That was really horrible. There's a lot of you in this room. This whole half of the room didn't even say anything, and I expect better next time. So now is next time. How are you doing? Good. Like to hear that. Can I talk without the mic for a little bit? Yes, praise Jesus. All right. My name is Danez Smith. As he said, I am a student advisor. Technically, my title is the creative advisor for the First Wave program, which is a groundbreaking program that I'll talk about a little bit later. I was asked to come here originally as a poet, and then I brought my educator self with me. So if you don't mind, I'd like to start off this with a poem. Is that okay? Cool. Any history teachers in the room? Word. Do you know who Bayard Rustin is as a history teacher? I'm about to give you do, though. Yes, praise. All right, history teacher's about to learn a lesson. So Bayard Rustin was a great civil rights leader. He introduced King to the topic of nonviolence. He was the main organizer for the March on Washington for Rights and Jobs. He is rarely talked about in our history because he was a queer man. I identify with that. I'm black, I'm queer, and so I'd like to start off today with a piece in honor of him. It starts with a quote from Bayard. "We are all one, and if we don't know it by now, we shall learn it." Skin of gospel, truthful eyes like gray clouds with them to soak, then pour. You are a rainy Sunday in our history, something holy, necessary, giant, but forgotten and neglected for brighter days. How could they push you into the back pew, more treacherous than a closet, seated you someplace to be unseen, unheard, needed your brain, your soul, your fire, your face was not welcome. Kept locked in a box somewhere, you were always trying to free someone forever, trying to escape something, eternally the prisoner. God imagined you into a knight, but King and his court fashioned you into a jester, clown, queer, your skin the right color, your lover the wrong sin. Men, your captor and your release, you just wanted to free them, Bayard. You just wanted to see them free to work, to love, to grow, to know life unlimited, to taste freedom unfiltered. You dreamed America beautiful, but black boys who couldn't get right were nightmares. Bayard Rustin, the movement was not for you. Your skin, yes, but your heart, that's a stretch. They were ashamed of you, Bayard. No matter what you spoke into existence, what you breathed life into, your lips were contradictions because you kissed men, and this was the movement of the church, amen. How could you lead them? What was your agenda? What would it look like if the leader of the black movement turned out to be a faggot? You humbly bowed into the shadows. You were a risk, a danger to the cause, too priceless to give up. They needed you, needed your fire, else everything might have burned. You kept that movement from being cinders, you cedar-skinned angel. What was your gospel? What kept you company in the shadows? Bayard, did you ever grow tired of the beatings? When the licks of enemies hurt less than the tongues of friends, did your hand ever clench? Did you ever throw that fist when they were surrounding you with nooses and torches ready? Everything around you in flames, and they were calling you flaming and nigger and faggot and coon, fairy, barely human, when the monsters were surrounding you, ready to butcher. What did you pray? Whose face was painted on the back of your eyelids to keep you at peace? What kept you moving? What kept you fighting? How deeply did you love your people? Did you know that everything you worked for would not bear your name? Marches, fights, freedom. Today, we owe our lives to you for your selflessness, your sacrifice, you historyless man, forgotten prophet, savior dressed in shadows, you made us one. If we don't know your name, we shall learn it. Thank you. All right. Cool. Thank you. So to get to what I want to talk about, I think I'd tell a little bit of my story. My name is Danez Smith, as I said many times already. I was raised here in the Twin Cities, St. Paul to be exact, Laurel Avenue, what's up? And yeah, I came through and I was always a student that I struggled a lot with English and reading. I was a late reader, really didn't learn how to read until probably about third or fourth grade, really. but I was always great at math and science, always really creative, but if you put me in an English classroom, I hated it with all intents and purposes. The idea of reading, writing, letters themselves, scary things to me. And then a magical thing happened in a theater class when I was in high school. A woman by the name of Jan Mandel, who now works for the district over in St. Paul Public Schools, brought in a poet to our social justice theater class by the name of Paul Flores, who got on stage, and for me, loudmouth little boy who's always talking in class but never really talking about anything at all, hearing loudmouth man come and inspire all of us to think about what was going on in our communities, both locally, nationally, and well, both inquires more than two, but also internationally. And what was happening with us and our generation was a powerful thing. And we started to write poetry in class. And I discovered that my grades, as we progressively started doing more and more of this poetry stuff, my grades in my English classes were getting better. And I really didn't understand why. But what I did know is that, and when I went to my theater class, I was accessing texts that looked like me, that were written by people that looked like me and indeed were my age. I wasn't reading Shakespeare. I wasn't reading Faulkner. I wasn't reading Morrison. God bless her, I love her now. But I was reading another 15-year-old, a 15-year-old black kid or a 14-year-old Filipino kid from California, and reading those works and seeing texts that related to me, that gave me an agency, that proved that my story was valid and that it was something worth writing, and that it might be something worth somebody reading one day. That class was infinitely transformative to my life. We started our own open mic in the school. So we got all the English teachers to bring down their classrooms during 6th hour, and a lot of other kids would just ditch and try to come down and hang out with us. And we would sit in there for an hour, sometimes 2 hours. We'd stay after school if they would let us. And 20, 30, 40 students, some students that had been labeled problem kids in our school, opening up their journals, their math notebooks, the back of their history textbook, and poems and raps and stories written that nobody had ever given them permission to share, that nobody had ever told them that was worthy enough to give to the world, that nobody had created a space in class for them to do that work. But we show up every day and there's a worksheet, or there's a paper due, or there's a test to take, or we're reading about history that happened 50 years ago, and not to be crass, but we're all learning this from, in my school, people that look nothing like us. A lot of well-intentioned white men and women, great transformative people in my life, but we weren't seeing ourselves reflected in the work, nor in the leadership in our classroom, and nor in what was being told to us that we should memorize and what we should value in our educations and in our lives. Fast forward to college. Oh, by the way, I want to tell this part of the story too. We took it upon ourselves to team up with another school from Minneapolis, a lot of kids from North High, to start our own teen poetry organization called Teens Rock the Mic. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. It had some leadership problems once we handed it over to the adults more fully, but for a long time, this is the power of teenagers. For a long time, it was ran by a whole bunch of 15 to 18-year-olds. That were organizing our own fundraisers and trying to go to national poetry events. We were going around to schools and leading workshops. I left high school so many times to go teach at another high school. I don't know how I graduated, but it was fun and it was great, and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but I knew somebody was telling me that I was worth something and that I had something to share and that I had something to teach. And for the first time in a very long time, I had a say in my education, and I also had a say in the education of my peers around me. Fast forward to college, or applying to college, I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew I had a wonderful local, and because of an event called Brave New Voices, a wonderful national poetry community that was very focused in high schools. I didn't know how I was going to do that in college. I thought it would just be something I did, something I tell my kids about one day. There was a wonderful program starting at the University of Wisconsin-Madison where I wound up receiving my BA and where I now teach, a program called First Wave. Which was a program designed by somebody who had been part of that youth community to try to capture that energy that we had in a collegiate manner. So what they did was they offered 15 full tuition scholarships to students from all across the nation to come, to fellowship with each other, to learn, to build. They didn't know what they were doing, and neither did we. They had never done this before. We showed up the first day, the syllabus was kind of blank. We didn't know what we were going to do. We got to major in whatever we want. We knew that we had the money to be there. We created this program from the ground up with the help of our leadership team. First Wave is now 7 years strong. My day job is teaching our lovely 7th cohort, 15 students from all over Hawaii, Arizona, Wisconsin, Philadelphia, Florida, everywhere. We might start getting some international students in. There's a couple of roadblocks with that, but we're working on it. And it's this wonderful, wonderful community of students who have a say in their education. And what we do is we not only offer them a scholarship, but they build works of art together. Every freshman group is required to produce a 15-person self-written play or production of some kind that they present at the end of the year. Our other students are encouraged to do small group projects. They can do solo works. I did a solo production that I then got to take on the road and got to take around to England and perform at a couple theaters. It was awesome. I'll tell you about it later. I got pictures. But we got to do all this amazing things, while also being encouraged to take our art and apply it to our academic endeavors. So it's about us encouraging our students to ask your chemistry professor that instead of that second test, can you come up with a 20-minute theater production or come up with a 15-page poetry chapbook that uses the ideas that you're learning in class and to exemplify your attainment of the knowledge in a way that doesn't look standardized, a way that looks like you, that feels like you, a way that you can express yourself fully. I did a couple of final papers in the forms of collections of poems or performances that I would do in front of the class instead. And still showing that I knew all the relevant info, still showing that I was paying attention in class and not nodding off, writing poems in the margins, but showing that I was learning and this is how I express that. And now that's my job. I graduated after 5 years. They hired me right back on. It's a lovely thing. I've done it for a little while now. I'm actually getting ready to move back here. So if you're hiring, holler at me after this. But so what do I really want to talk about? I want to talk about art as, not as art, because I think everybody in here can agree that art is great, right? You like art? We're doing good? If you don't like art, you're messing up. You're in the theater district right now. Get it together. How are we doing on time? We're good? Cool. But art as a means for education and not just having the sectioned off art class or theater class or creative writing class, but how we incorporate art into our science courses, into our English courses, our history courses. What art does is, or what it does is allow us to develop our creative problem-solving skills as students. I still include myself amongst a group of students because I hope to never stop learning. But it allows us creative problem-solving skills. So when you give somebody an art challenge, we often give our students like 15 minutes. Go in the corner, talk about something, work it out. You can only use 10 words. And they have to come up with a 2-minute production. And what that does is it challenges them. They are growing in art in this fun way. We're tricking them into learning so that by the time they go back into their regular classrooms, they're able to say, this challenge, how do I think creatively about this? Not looking at it as a weight, not looking at it as a roadblock, not looking at it as something they are required to do, but they're having fun. They're being creative with it. They're being able to not figure out how to go over the bridge, but how do I dig under? It's a roadblock. How do I go around? How do I just walk right through? Can I become transparent, translucent? It's wonderful. I love the work I do. And what it also does is we give students agency. This room will never be what education reform looks like. We're all too old. We are all way, way, way too old. Education is about students. And I kind of hate the word teachers too. That's why I say educator. More often I like the word facilitator. That's what we're there to do. What we do in First Wave is we try not to overbear on our students and what they learn, but we come to them and say, what do you want to learn? How do you want to learn it? Let's think together. I'll be there as a guide because I've done this before. When I do this in high schools, you have to be the guide. 15-year-olds sometimes can come up with some really crazy things if you ask them how they want to learn something, but what can we do within our means? And how can we do this? And really, it's low budget. It takes nothing. It takes a couple bodies in a room to learn something and a computer screen half the time. So what we're doing is we're giving our students agency. We're letting them have a say. We're seeing students that weren't great high school students flourish in the university space because they have that ownership, because they're able to place their name on their education and not feel like it's owned by somebody else. We're giving them access to each other as resources, as first-person accounts to what we're learning in the space. So we're not asking our students to go and read something that was made 100 years ago that we're still finding relevant. I really don't want to force my students to read Huck Finn. If they want to go do that, they can do that. That's fine. We'll talk about it. It's a great book. We'll talk about it over coffee. It'll be a thing. But I'm not going to make them do that. But what I do want them to do is to have enough control over their education that they want to seek that they want to go out and get these things. And that's really what comes from that agency. I know we said we weren't going to use a lot of the jargon, but I love the word agency. It's so great. I never would have been standing in front of you today if somebody at 14 didn't give me agency over my own education, and it's awesome. I wanted to also talk about, let me check my notes real quick here, people. It's a wonderful thing. As access to literacy, a lot of students, they're right, school's boring half the time. If you stick standardized testing, God forbid it, in the future, but hopefully No Child Left Behind gets left behind and we can really come up with some creative things to do in our education spaces. But it gives us access to literacy. Back in high school, that first program I mentioned, we did this thing called arts literacy, which was having students create art, look at art, to understand the world around them, to read a text and then bring it to life in a way. So reading Beloved by Toni Morrison, and instead of writing a paper, everybody go off and make a 5-minute play amongst the three of you to understand that in a way. So looking at ways to use art in replacement for those traditional things, especially to work with students that learn in different ways. Not everybody's great at sitting down and writing a paper or taking a test, but you give some students an hour to come back with a production to be the most fabulous thing you've ever seen. And also transferable skills. Most of our students in first wave don't plan on being an artist by the time they graduate. A lot of them plan to be doctors, chemists, lawyers. A lot of lawyers in first wave. We're gonna have a lot of poetry lawyers sometime soon. Be ready for that. But we're giving them transferable skills by asking them to be creative. They're able to go into these 5 minutes. We are asking them to be creative in their everyday endeavors, to figure it out, to go and do something. We're asking them to collaborate, which is increasingly important in today's world. We're not just working by ourselves often, we're working in teams. But I think the creativity is the main point, because I think standardized testing leads to a lot of desk jobs. It leads to a lot of cubicles. But creativity to me leads to things like Apple, leads to Windows, leads to the cure for cancer one of these days, because they wrote a poem when they were in the 4th grade. It can be awesome. It may be. But what we're doing is we're encouraging students to think outside of the box. We're encouraging them to take those skills that they're learning within this art creation space and take them with them as they go throughout their life journeys. Right now, we are only 2 years into having alumni for our program, but we have students that are working in executive level positions for Teach for America or for the Harlem Children's Zone. We have students that are in law school, that are really acting as paralegals on some very important cases in the state of Wisconsin right now. We have students that are working in every field. We have students that are going into labs and really doing some groundbreaking scientific research. And they're able to come back to us and say, you know what, if it wouldn't have been for the fact that somebody made me wake up every day and think about art and think creatively and think, how do I do something that I am unable to do and figure it out, I never would have been here. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I want to end with one more poem, if that's okay with everybody, just to end things out. Cool. So yeah, this poem is called, it's not a very creative title, it's called Happy. Because there's a section of my life where I wrote a lot of really sad poems, and so I wanted to write something to cheer myself up. Still, it starts kind of sad, so let it ride. I've written so many poems about the dirt and death of this dark thing that I've trained my tongue to call life. Actually, calling my life a dark thing isn't quite correct. See, I've loved. Gotten heart shattered, yes, but I've loved. I've known flesh sweet as nectarine, soft as gospel on a pink throat. I've learned that heaven is a body that you can sweat with or bite into. Have you ever laughed so hard you believed in God again? Smiled until you felt your first kiss replay on your lips, drank until you told everybody walking down the street that you love them and I love you. I love you. And really meant it. We keep our good times tucked in the darkest corner of our skin, like feeling joy is a shameful thing. Who taught us it was a sin to feel sunlight bursting from our ribs? We keep our good times hidden until they can be coaxed out by smoke. Liquid fire shot down our throats. How sad we need assistance to smile, because every day we wake up is a good one. Every moon we get to see is a cause for celebration. How many breaths did you take today? Every time your chest swells is a story worth telling. We forget the miracle in a heartbeat, the blessing of somebody that knows our scars and thinks they're beautiful, so obsessed over death that we forgot the eternity and afterlife, so obsessed over the trial that we forgot the joys and the triumph, so obsessed over midnight that we forgot the stars. See, we are made of blood. And as long as you are full of it, you deserve music. And tomorrow, you are worth it enough to sing every day. You're worth it enough to promise yourself love all the time. The only lover you need is yourself. As long as you got a home made out of skin and bone, you got something to dance about. You have mused 1,000 sunsets. There are phoenixes that look up to you. The dawn looks to you for inspiration every day. You are so damn fine. It hurts not to stare. Your face is a mirror that God looks into to remember that he's beautiful. Remember that. Remember yourself. Remember yourself happy. Remember happy when hope seems distant as a star, when loneliness is the only one who will say your name. Laugh like you got a belly full of fireflies. Don't tell anybody the joke. Keep it tucked in the darkest corner of your skin and take it out when you need to feel loved. And know that you are. Thank you.